With the 2026 ski season underway and several videos on Australian ski resorts coming out, some from yours truly, there comes inevitable backlash against Australian skiing. The only thing is that with my country, it gets it worse than just about anywhere else in the world. At times it feels like defending Australian skiing is as hard as getting an American to use the metric system or finding a European skier without a superiority complex. But if I don't defend this country's ski industry, then it seems like no one else will. So I'll address and take down some of the most common criticisms laid against skiing in Australia. So this is a bit interesting. Yes, Australia does get less snow on average than most other places, but the severity of this is over-exaggerated by how we measure snow. The most well-known statistic for snow here comes from the Spencer's Creek station, which is operated by Snowy Hydro. As they are a hydroelectric company, they are more concerned with the water that will run down into their dams than with ski resort powder days, so the statistic they publish is the maximum snow depth. This can be pretty useful for determining how much the terrain is filled in, but the problem comes that the US, Japan and Canada don't use that as their main statistics. They use total snowfall across the season, which is different as it measures freshly fallen snow without compaction, wind blowing or melting. This is always way higher than the base depth, and unfortunately, Australia looks even worse by comparison. I will use a few resorts to compare these stats. Whistler Blackcomb on average gets a base depth of 3.5 to 4 metres each year, whilst receiving around 10.4 metres of snowfall. Mount Hotham has an average base depth of 1.5 metres, with an annual snowfall of 3 metres. So the often reported statistic of 1.9 metres average maximum base depth is not fair to compare to a place with 13 metres of annual snowfall. Those are different measures. Unfortunately, we don't have a great alternative for the snowfall stat, so I had to manually calculate the 2025 total snowfall using the daily experimental data, which found that July of 2025 had nearly 1.5 metres of total snowfall. But for other claims around low snowfall, particularly around the lower elevations, don't other places around the world have the same issue? Whistler is rarely good to the base, Chamonix is rarely skiable to the village these days, and so on. I wouldn't say it's fair to criticise Australia for having not a lot of snow at its lower elevations, but other areas can get away with it. And the dry 2026 season start was an absolutely horrendous outlier, but just like how the 2026 season in most of the western US sucked, every place has its ups and downs. I've had many great powder days here, even when I was just going on the weekends and not specifically chasing for them. So while the snow isn't as impressive as elsewhere, it is nowhere near as bad as mismatched statistics make it seem. Some people will really look at one POV of a run down under and roast the entire country for being flat. And I just don't think that's entirely true. Even within resort boundaries, there are numerous chutes and cliffs that these commenters would not be able to handle. Mount Hotham has many true experts-only lines inside of its, well, extreme zone, and the chutes off of Mount Buller summit are killer. Then there's the stuff beyond the resorts. Mount Feathertop, Blue Lake, Watson's Craig, Sentinel, Frenchman's, Mount Bogon, Howard, I could go on.
Do these look flat to you?
So, dear non-Australian, if you take one look at that dome that is Mount Kosciuszko and declare all of our terrain mild, you really need to do some more looking. First of all, this goes out to all the Austrian and Swiss commenters who bag on the United States and other countries for their lifts.
Not everyone needs a heated bubble six-pack with their mild groomers, okay?
I would say what we have is more or less sufficient. There are only a handful of fixed grip lifts that are long enough to warrant being a detachable, and the rest are fine as they are. Many of the upper area T-bars help immensely with windy days as they allow those areas to operate. It allows you to ski and ride when the chairlifts, even a lot of modern ones, wouldn't be able to operate. And Europe, don't forget that you also have a lot of fixed grip chairlifts and surface lifts. And besides, there are other places such as South America that have even more outdated infrastructure. And most of Japan's detachables still date back to the 80s and 90s. We clearly are not the runt of the litter here. This is highly variable, but Australian resorts are like any other in that they have their choke points, but also their quieter areas. Seeing one school holiday queue at Front Valley or Burke Street is not what most of the terrain a serious rider would be lapping is like, especially if you are not going during those extremely busy 2 weeks. And remember, everywhere gets lift lines. Japan, Canada, even Austria.
I'd like to apologise to many of you Europeans watching, as although I may be quite harsh on you,
I've seen you very often in these comment sections, criticising Australian skiing, and the Americans have already been hated to death, so no point firing at them.
This is going to be the toughest one for me to defend, partially since I'm too young to be paying for most of these things. That being said, I'm almost certain that it's cheaper for people in Eastern Australia to ski locally rather than fly to Japan or New Zealand. Yes, prices are much higher than they should be. Many places on or off a mountain have fairly normal prices, and you also don't have to pay for the airplane ticket, extra transport from the airport, or passports. And if you're a first timer looking to see the snow for the first time, and immediately look to the big resorts as the only option, again, you're doing it wrong. If you're in the ACT or New South Wales, Coen Forest and Selwyn snowfields provide much cheaper alternatives that, at the level of experience you are at, won't be much worse of an experience. If you're in Victoria, please give Mount Borbor some love. I've been struggling really hard lately and provide a much quieter experience for Melbourne as compared to Mount Buller. It's like if Japan was just Niseko, or the Alps was just Zermatt and St. Maurice. If you are further north in Queensland or far out west, then yeah, it would be more practical to go elsewhere, but for the majority of Australians, your wallet is better off at home. Phew. So that was aggressively defensive, but I shouldn't just be trying to fend off the bad, I should be highlighting the good. The terrain does provide a taste of every single terrain type, from rolling groomers to steep moguls, to tight forests to open bowls. We have many Winter Olympians to be proud of, including nearly 20 medalists. The gum trees and rocks make for some genuinely unique landscapes and views. And of course, there's all the friends I've made along the way. Yay!
I come from a land down under, where women glow and men plunder. Catch you hear the thunder. You better run, you better take cover. Yeah.